Okay, this is Channel 12.
KBDI, Colorado Public Television, is proud to present...
This is viewer-sponsored public television serving the Front Range, KBDI TV 12, Broomfield, Colorado.
KBDI, Colorado Public Television, is proud to present Colorado Inside Out, bringing you a world view and a community voice while keeping our ever-watchful beady eye on politics and politicians.
Good evening, and welcome to Colorado Inside Out, the show where journalists, pundits, and activists talk about the news that has the city talking. Tonight, our annual look back at the events of this past year, 1968. I'm your host, Hugh Terry, General Manager of KLZ AM, FM, and of course, KLZ TV, Channel 7 on your TV dial. Joining me on the panel tonight, Molly Mayfield, a columnist writing here in Denver. Molly, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, I don't really think I need to introduce myself to this audience. You read me all the time in the Rocky Mountain News. Molly Mayfield. My true name is Frances Foster. Moved here in '42 when my husband Jack became the editor of the Rocky Mountain News. He did two big things besides make it a successful paper. Turned it tabloid and hired me in 1942 to write the first advice column in the country. I focused on the lovelorn servicemen at Lowry, but since then, how things have changed over the last 26 years, and now I tackle every topic that's hot in this town.
It's great to have you on the panel. Up next, Gerald Kopel, a community organizer in Park Hill. Gerald, tell us a little about yourself.
Sure. I used to be with the Rocky Mountain News. I've also been a state representative, but right now I'm focused on community organizing with the Park Hill Action Committee, and we're working very closely with the churches in the community to prevent blockbusting and white flight and keep Park Hill integrated.
Next on our panel, Al Nakkula, a reporter with the Rocky Mountain News. Al, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, as you know, most people in Denver know I'm the police reporter at the Rocky Mountain News, and I'm taking a break right now from my undercover assignment, so I hope that this doesn't air before I'm done. But I'm infiltrating the hippie movement up in Nederland and Jamestown and Gold Hill up in Boulder, and I was able to pick up one of these things, this marijuana they call it, and I haven't tried it yet, but it's highly illegal, so I'm going to get out of the studio as soon as we're done here.
Well, we'll do our best to keep your identity secret, at least until you've done your work.
Rad.
And wrapping up our panel today, Florynce Kennedy, activist, lawyer, and author. Ms. Kennedy, tell us a bit about yourself.
Well, thank you, Mr. Terry. I hail from New York, but I was born right in Kansas City, Missouri. Perhaps some of you have seen me on TV being jeered at some of my appearances. It does happen. I was the second African-American woman to graduate from Columbia Law School. I am a feminist, a founding member of the National Organization of Women, and I am thrilled to be here. I am here because of a recent uprising in 5 Points, and so thank you very much for having me on your panel. And Al, you and I perhaps will have to get together after the show.
Right on, sister.
Power.
Let's get to our show. What a difference a year makes. Last year, America celebrated a summer of love, and this year could not have been a bigger contrast. Time to coincide with the Lunar New Year, the North Vietnamese government and Communist Viet Cong forces launched a coordinated attack on targets in the south, demonstrating they are nowhere near collapse as we have been told. The Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated in April, followed by Robert F. Kennedy in June, while unrest sweeps across the nation's college campuses. Molly, we'll begin with you. While it's hard to understand now, only a few months after, how do we comprehend the impact of the assassinations of both Martin Luther King and Robert Kennedy?
Well, if we think of 1967 as the summer of love, when all things seemed possible, and there were a lot of breaking down of the social mores. I wrote about it a lot. Many people having sex, that marijuana is very popular, although illegal. If the last year was the summer of love, this is the winter of our discontent. There is no question that everyone has lost faith in Washington, D.C., and the word coming out of Washington, D.C. Clearly, this is not a war that we are winning. I started my career during World War II when our goal was very clear. It was easier to give advice to the boys going off to war because You knew what they were fighting for, and you knew what the people at home stood for. Now, what does our government stand for? They stand for oppression. They do not stand for free speech. Al, I'm sure, can speak to this too, but the number of stories we have to cover in our newsroom, the unrest is incredible. And then to add to that, the unbelievable disillusionment and sadness, no matter how you felt about Robert Kennedy's candidacy, you could not help but be appalled that this had happened to a brother of JFK. And what happened with Martin Luther King after what he had done to change the face of this country and the world is a sad, sad, dark time for us.
Gerald, I'm sure as a community organizer, the war, the assassinations, the entire tenor of 1968 has made a great impact on what you do. Tell us the impact of all these major events of this year, 1968.
Well, this Summer of Love in San Francisco with the hippies and their ridiculous music, that was fine for them. But let's remember that we've had major race riots in almost every big American city in this country, starting in '65 and continuing this summer as well. In fact, Denver's been one of the very few cities of its size that's been spared of that, and that's partly because Denver, unlike other cities, has been successfully integrating. The Tet Offensive by the communists against South Vietnam was a military disaster for them. It wiped out the Viet Cong as a fighting force and really set them back on the battlefield ultimately. But at the peak of that surprise attack, they captured Hue, the northern capital in the olden days of southern Vietnam, got troops even up into the U.S. Embassy compound, and so it really amplified President Johnson's problem of a credibility gap, as they call it, because he'd been saying the war is going great, we're winning, and even if we are winning in the long run, it sure didn't feel like that at the time. And so I think that's one of the reasons, unfortunately, that the people decided they wanted to make a change. Nixon says he's got a secret plan to end the war in Vietnam. Who knows what that is, but the people wanted to try something different.
Al, I guess my question to you is now with these developments we've seen with the conflict in Vietnam and the reports from the government, do you believe that the public is going to begin to doubt what we're hearing from the government, and should they? You as a reporter are right in the front lines of that.
Oh, you're right. You're absolutely right, Hugh. The public is very, very uncertain about what to believe these days. You got people throwing around alternate facts right and left. You don't know what to believe. You can believe the Rocky Mountain News, though. I'll tell you that, because I spend the time in the field talking to these folks. And I'll tell you what Mr. Kopel says is very accurate. After the Summer of Love and all the good feeling, a lot of the younger generation now is just highly disillusioned, and they're tuning out. They're tuning out from civic involvement, tuning out from a whole lot of things, and they're just enjoying this what they call it, ganja, and I fear for the next generation. I really do. But that's why I'm spending this time, the next 3 months, undercover with that movement. I'm going to find out what's going on.
Well, Florynce, speaking of the next generation, how does the civil rights movement pick up the pieces after a year like 1968?
Well, first of all, I want to tell Brother Al here that it's ganja.
Oh, okay.
Okay? All right. And, well, I have to just take issue with this characterization of 1967 as the Summer of Love. While Al's friends were smoking ganja, in Haight-Ashbury and other places, there were more than 159 riots, race riots in America, from Boston to Detroit, Cincinnati. And so it's not the Summer of Love for everyone. It's not the Summer of Love for everyone. And with the assassination of Martin Luther King, it's a tragic story. It's a tragic story. Martin Luther King and the nonviolent civil rights movement had done so much, but there was increasing tension between the younger generation and Martin Luther King. We have black Afro-American men and women who do not want to turn the other cheek, who do not want to turn the cheek. And certainly, although they had disagreements with Dr. King after his brutal murder, are not willing to turn the other cheek. And so black power will be supplanting turn the other cheek. And as for Vietnam, I just have to say, my goodness, the Vietnamese people have been fighting for 40 or 50 years. They've been fighting the Japanese, they've been fighting the French. Japanese didn't win, the French didn't win. This war can't be won. Walter Cronkite said it himself. This war cannot be run. And we are using American men as cannon fodder. Shame.
Protests have swept across the Front Range this year as students at the University of Denver staged a sit-in and were subsequently expelled from school. And a dry cleaners riot broke out in September in Denver's Five Points neighborhood. Meanwhile, the University of Colorado Athletic Department and the Denver Police Department are facing accusations of racial bias in their programs. Gerald, let's start with you on this one. To what account should the city of Denver be held to in handling riots that are now striking here in Denver?
Well, I'd say at the University of Denver protest, where 40 students did a sit-in and wouldn't leave the registrar's office because they were protesting that graduate students aren't allowed on the student government, and maybe they've got a point about that, but a sit-in in somebody's office is not a good way to advance that. I think the police handled it well, and most students at DU actually supported, at least opposed the method that the students were using. Up at the University of Colorado, they're protesting that the men want unlimited visits with no restrictions in the women's dorms. You can at least understand why men of every generation would be in favor of that. But I think we should focus on the more important issue, which is the Denver public schools. This year, Rachel Noel on the Denver School Board introduced a motion to move forward on integration of the schools, and that was defeated 7-2. Denver has never had school segregation in a formal sense, but what we all know is that the school board has historically drawn attendance boundaries and built schools in particular locations so they can keep those schools mostly segregated. You'll build one school in the black neighborhood, one in the white neighborhood, rather than say two schools in between where you could draw from a mixture of people. And I think we need to change the school board, and we need to get this reform going soon, because frankly, if we don't, somebody's going to bring a federal court case and the school board could lose it, and then we'd end up with things like federal court supervision of the schools and forced busing, which would be very unpopular and disruptive.
A federal court case, that's hard to imagine, but I understand your point. Al, you cover the police here in Denver.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What do you make of the accusations of racial bias within their ranks?
Well, I think Mayor Corrigan, who recently announced he's going to resign at the end of the year because he doesn't make enough money. The taxpayers turned down his pay raise, and he's got to send kids to college. But I think Corrigan did a good thing. He really is responsible, I think, Florynce, I want to tell you. Our mayor is responsible for keeping things calm while the cities in the rest of the country have had a lot of trouble. Former Chief Dill, last year, as you know, the charges of police brutality during the disturbances up at the shopping center up in northeast Denver, he replaced Dill, and Dill was very popular and a very good friend of Corrigan, but friendship only went so far. To keep order in this city, the mayor fired Harold last year and he put in George Seaton. Seaton's had about a year now, and he's done a very good job. I think he's responsible for it. I just want to comment a little bit on what Mr. Kopel had to say. And he's absolutely right, but he didn't get to the punchline. And the punchline is that this city doesn't necessarily have segregated schools, but it has segregated neighborhoods. This is a different city north of Alameda and south of Alameda. And where the school board decides to build those schools and draw those boundaries results in segregated schools. Park Hill is approaching it right. They're approaching it right. And that we need to have integrated neighborhoods throughout Denver. That would integrate the neighborhood schools, because we have to keep schools in the neighborhood to have strong neighborhoods.
Florynce, what do our viewers need to know about the dry cleaner riots in the Five Points neighborhood in Denver that may not have made headlines already?
That's a great question, Mr. Terry. But first, let me respond to Al's comments here about Mayor Corrigan keeping the waters calm in Denver. This is the same police department that raided the home and vandalized the home of Denver Black Panther Party member Lauren Watson. This is the same police department. Okay, this is the same police department that brutally broke up an uprising that happened in 5 Points after a 8-year-old young Afro-American boy, bleeding, tried to seek help at Gregory's dry cleaners store. The white owner's son came out with a bat and threatened the boy, and finally threw cleaning fluid on him. when the black community rose up in anger, this was the Denver Police Department that dispersed this crowd, hurting tens of innocent bystanders. So I'm not too impressed. Okay, this may not be Mississippi, it may not be Chicago,
Right.
but I'm not too impressed with the Denver police force. Did you have another question, Mr. Cherry?
No, in fact, I wanted to involve Molly in the conversation. Molly, you have your finger on the pulse of the personality and the mood in Denver. Do you think Denver is a powder keg of a city like other cities that we've seen out east?
It is not as bad, certainly, as other cities, but there is no question that the Denver police are approaching earning the same pig label that we are seeing around the country. It is not just their abysmal behavior in 5 Points, but we have the family dog, an interesting place where kids are going to hear the music now. Generally, they're very well behaved. Al, I think you've heard about some of this. They've gone undercover. They've busted those kids. They have followed them. The kids are just out having a good time. There are other bad characters around town. We have 2 acid labs that just got busted. But let the kids go hear their music. Let them protest peacefully at the schools. As long as the protests are peaceful, people need to be heard.
And now a word from our sponsor. Hey folks, if you're in the market for a new car, why not visit the fine folks at Fred Vaughn's Ramblerville at 5600 South Broadway, the sponsors of Colorado Inside Out. You can see the exciting new AMX all the pony cars are so frightened of. Maybe all the power's not what you're looking for. Well, right now, if you buy a Rambler American, Rebel, or Ambassador, you'll take home a free Kelvinator freezer. That's right. Buy a car and get a fabulous Kelvinator freezer absolutely free of charge. Tell Fred's people you heard about it right here on KBDI. The Democratic National Convention erupted into 3 days of violence in August, both in the streets of Chicago and on the convention floor. In fact, a delegate from Colorado was among the first to inform the convention floor that riots were going on outside. Meanwhile, the Chicago 8, a group of anarchists, will face charges of conspiracy to cross state lines with intent to incite a riot. The activists are not the only ones to come under scrutiny over the events in Chicago. Mayor Richard Daley and his police force have drawn scorn from people across the nation in its reaction to the protesters.
Colorado. Mr. Chairman, Colorado rises to a point of information. Is there any rule under which Mayor Daley can be compelled to suspend the police state terror perpetrated this minute on kids in front of the Conrad Hilton?
Al, we'll start with you on this one. Do we have anything to fear in Denver of police reaction like we saw in Chicago this year?
No, I really don't think so. I mean, I think we got a pretty good police force, Miss New York City. I'll tell you what, we've kept things calm here, and in fact, I would invite some of them Chicago 7 people to come and live here for a while and see how much better it could be, right, after their trial. But as far as the convention, I am shocked. I'm shocked at the scene, the display. It was terrible. I can't believe that they didn't bust more heads, to tell you the truth, because those people in the street were absolutely disgraceful. I think Mayor Daley did what he had to do to keep the street safe and to keep the convention goers safe.
Florynce, did what happened in Chicago during the convention put a damper? How did it affect other activism that you've seen throughout the country?
It's only rising, and you have to hold on there, Mr. Terry, because you're about to incite a riot right here. I heard you refer to the Chicago 8 as anarchists. Dellinger ain't an anarchist. Tom Hayden ain't an anarchist. Bobby Sill ain't an anarchist. I can't say much about those yippies. But the others, they're not anarchists. They are challenging the military-industrial complex, the corporate structure. That's revolution. That's not anarchy. So I just have to back down on my New York ways. And what was your other question?
The impact on community activists throughout the country.
Calm down.
What was your other question?
The impact of community activists throughout the country. Since you're traveling from New York and obviously have strong opinions, what happened in Chicago this year? How did it affect other activists throughout the country?
Oh, Mr. Terry, this is not going to stop. This is not going to stop. from DU to CU to Columbia to Berkeley to Harvard. This activism on our college campuses and the activism in the streets is not going to stop. And folks are just going to steel their backs. We had a display, Mayor Daley, who's also known as Mayor Thug, a display of horrendous governmental abuse and power. And it's not going to stop. And if Denver doesn't wake up, you know what's going to happen here. We're going to be a mile high.
Indeed. Molly, from what we've seen in the months since, what do you think now that we've seen it in a few months later, was what we saw in Chicago more about outsiders inciting a riot, or was it more about the reaction from the police?
Well, I happened to be staying with a very lovely family in Glencoe, Illinois for a few days during those riots, and I can tell you it is exactly Mayor Daley's Chicago that put the boot down on protesters. Yes, some of them acted out, but there is a reason these young people are protesting. They are being drafted to go to a war that makes no sense. They want to be heard on it, and the behavior of Mayor Daley's Chicago was exactly in line with the city that stole the 1960 presidential election. It was appalling, and let us hope Denver never goes in that direction.
Gerald, what do you think ensures that riots like this won't happen here in Denver?
Well, a better police force than the one that's run by Mayor Daley. And some people have, I think, accurately characterized what they did as a police riot. And of course, we need the police to enforce the law, but the police have to be lawful when they're doing it themselves. But there's no doubt that the communists and the yippies and whatever else you want to call those people who went to Chicago went there with the intent to incite a riot.
That's right.
And they were going to start a riot no matter what the police did. And their plan was to ruin the Democratic National Convention, which they succeeded at, and help elect Nixon, because they follow the communist Leninist theory of the worse the better, so they think that by helping get Nixon into power, they're going to get their revolution sooner. I think what they're actually going to cause is a severe law and order crackdown that's going to violate a lot of civil rights.
We have some footage and a reaction for President-elect Richard M. Nixon.
It is time for an honest look at the problem of order in the United States. Dissent is a necessary ingredient of change, but in a system that provides for peaceful change, there is no cause that justifies resorting to violence. Let us recognize that the first civil right of every American is to be free from domestic violence. So I pledge to you, we shall have order in the United States.
Let's get to our part of the show that we do each week here on Colorado Inside Out. It is called Disgrace of the Week. Well, because it is our year in review of 1968, let's do a Disgrace of the Year. Already knowing, panel, that the assassinations of both Dr. Martin Luther King and Robert F. Kennedy were disgraceful enough to take that title. Beyond those obvious disgraces, let's get your other disgraces of 1968. Molly, we'll start with you.
Well, I brought a few props here. I've been in the workforce for 25 years. I'm glad that women realize they don't have to be wearing aprons anymore. They can take them off and go in the workplace. But ladies, as evidenced at this year's Miss America pageant, keep the brassieres on. It's just a more sightly look. Here, you may have that.
I'm glad we're on KBDI TV and we're not on KLZ TV right now. I'd be worried for our Channel 7. Gerald, you're up next for your disgrace of 1968.
Well, I guess on a perhaps lighter note, the movie 2001: A Space Odyssey, which just had fantastic special effects and a really good story until you got to the end, and then it all went crazy and nobody could figure out what happened.
Al, your disgrace of 1968.
Well, mine's a little more personal. I'll tell you what, City of San Francisco. Last year, I went out for the Summer of Love. I came back to the winner of the clap.
And Florynce, it'd be hard to follow that one, but give it your best shot. Your disgrace of 1968.
Indeed. I'll put Al in there, but also George Wallace winning 49 electoral votes. My goodness. And the Republican Party and their Southern strategy trying to flank George Wallace. I tell you, the Republican Party is going from the party of Lincoln to the party of Jefferson Davis.
Be hard to trump that.
Well, we always end our program with saying something nice. Since we've had our disgrace, now we need to say something nice about 1968. And Molly, we'll start with you again.
Well, you know, Colorado was the first state to give women the right to vote, and they certainly deserved it. We have a young legislator who pushed through the bill to make Colorado the first state to legalize abortion. I think we're going to hear a lot more about Dick Lamb.
Wow, that remains to be seen. Gerald, you're saying something nice about 1968.
Well, the Broncos this season finished 5-9, which was an improvement from 3-11 back in 1967, and even their losses were closer than some of their worst from '67. Their problem is they can't beat their Western Division rivals, Oakland, Kansas City, and San Diego. If they can figure out how to do that, then I think with Lou Saban they have a real chance to go far.
And it's just unfortunate we're not seeing the same success out of Coach Saban that we've seen elsewhere. Al, say something nice about somebody.
Well, I'm gonna piggyback on what Mr. Kopel had to say, and I want to thank the voters in 4 counties, Denver and surrounding, for turning down that ridiculous $20 million bond issue to build the Broncos a new stadium. There is nothing wrong with Bears Stadium.
I could see people playing in Bear Stadium for years to come.
Many years.
And Florynce, you're saying something nice about somebody in 1968.
You bet, Mr. Terry. Now, I'm not from these parts, so I'm going to go to Massachusetts and say something nice about William Baird for handing out contraceptive foam at Boston University. This happened in 1967, but he's carrying this case forward. We're going to hear about this man. He is challenging the Keep 'em in Chastity Belts law in Massachusetts, and look for the Supreme Court to rule on this case.
Well, being to say something nice, I want to get involved. I want to acknowledge a Missouri couple who have been spending their summers in the Elk Mountains since the late 1940s. Welcome Joe Neal, his wife Esther, and tiny Crystal City, population 15, made the AP Newswire this summer for the Hubert H. Humphrey campaign headquarters they set up in an old mining cabin. The Neal's daughter, Patty, worked for Humphrey, and when conservative friends of the Neals arrived at the cabin, they found it wallpapered with Hubert H. Humphrey campaign material. A KBDI reporter spoke with Esther Neal. She told our reporter the couple good-naturedly handed out the material to any hiker or Jeep party that passed through town. Oh, I hope we never lose this spirit in our political discourse. That's all the time we have for Colorado Inside Out this week here on KBDI. We hope you enjoyed our look back at the events of 1968. We felt that after a year of turmoil, there was a hopeful moment offered by the crew of Apollo 8, the first view of our home planet as seen from another world. We would like to end our look back with this. On behalf of everyone here at KBDI TV, I'm Hugh Terry. Good night.
Oh, your brother's bound and gagged, and they've chained him to a chair. Won't you please come to Chicago just to sing? In a land that's known as freedom, how can such a thing be fair? Won't you please come to Chicago for the help that we can bring? We can